something else happened this weekend, and it needs to be addressed. And that is the president's premature and escalatory decision to deploy not only the National Guard troops to Los Angeles, but active duty Marines as well.
President Trump recognizes a situation like that, improperly handled by a governor, like it was by Governor Walz, if it gets out of control, is a bad situation for the citizens of any location. ICE ought to be able to do its job, whether it's Minneapolis or Los Angeles.
I have limited time. I asked a budget
and they
question.
Are being,
Could the Secretary please address the budget? Thank you.
You asked about the situation in Los Angeles, and we believe ICE agents should be allowed to be safe in doing their operations, and we have deployed National Guard and the Marines to protect them in the execution of their duties.
Something else happened this weekend, and it needs to be addressed. And that is the president's premature and escalatory decision to deploy not only the National Guard troops to Los Angeles, but active duty Marines as well. Mr. Secretary, we're both from Minnesota. I was in the Twin Cities during the riots that followed the murder of George Floyd. Tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets for days. Governor Walz made the decision to call up the Minnesota National Guard. At no point did we need the citizens of Minnesota request that the Marines be deployed. Our state and local law enforcement, along with our National Guard, who have worked on crowd control, they were more than enough. They were more than capable of handling this situation. History has proven that law enforcement and the National Guard are more than capable of handling situations more volatile than what happened this weekend. We all see the continuous loops on TV, but this looks nothing like the George Floyd protests or the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles in 1992. Mr. Secretary, this is a deeply unfair position to put our Marines in. Their service should be honored. It should not be exploited. The President has issued an executive order and talked about deploying troops across the country. Los Angeles County has 17,000 law enforcement personnel, and the state of California has 24,000 National Guard troops. So that's why the Los Angeles Chief Police to say, and I quote, "The possible arrival of federal military forces in Los Angeles is absent a clear coordination, presents a significant logistical operational challenge for those of us who are charged with safeguarding the city," the end of his quote. As I mentioned before, in Minnesota, we train for those things together. So there's no need for the Marines to be deployed. So here are my budget questions, though. What is the current cost for what is taking place in California, and how is it going to affect this budget or the budget we're currently serving under? How much are these deployments going to cost for both the Marines and the National Guard? And what training or duties are not taking place because of these deployments? Where in your limited budget, sir, are you going to find, in the remainder of this fiscal year, are you going to pull the money to cover these deployments? What holes are being created?
Well, Congresswoman, thank you for the question. You are right. We are both originally from Minnesota, which is why I recall 2020 quite well, when Governor Walz abandoned a police precinct and allowed it to be burned to the ground, and also allowed 5 days of chaos to occur inside the streets of Minneapolis. The police precinct, ma'am, was abandoned and burned to the ground. And because of that, the National Guard was eventually far too late mobilized. And President Trump recognizes a situation like that, improperly handled by a governor, like it was by Governor Walz, if it gets out of control, is a bad situation for the citizens of any location. So in Los Angeles, we believe that ICE, which is a federal law enforcement agency, has the right to safely conduct operations in any state and any jurisdiction in the country, especially after 21 million illegals have crossed our border under the previous administration. ICE ought to be able to do its job, whether it's Minneapolis or Los Angeles.
I have limited time. I asked a budget
and they
question.
Are being,
Could the Secretary please address the budget? Thank you.
You asked about the situation in Los Angeles, and we believe ICE agents should be allowed to be safe in doing their operations, and we have deployed National Guard and the Marines to protect them in the execution of their duties, because we ought to be able to enforce immigration law in this country, unlike what Governor Walz did in 2020. There are 17,000 LAPD, you mentioned that. There would be 18,000 if not for the defund movement that folks like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass have
Chairman,
implemented.
If
The police
if-
chief
if,
said
Mr.
she was
Chairman,
overwhelmed,
if the Secretary's not
so we
going to
helped.
ask the budgetary questions, I will yield back my time if the Secretary refuses to answer the budgetary questions I put before him. They're important. What training missions aren't happening? Where are you pulling the money from? And how are you planning this in the, moving forward? These are budget questions that affect this committee and the decisions we're going to be making in a couple of hours. If you're not going to answer them, please let the chairman know, and I will take back my time and I will yield it back to the chairman.
Mr. Secretary, I want to just let us know what accounts you're pulling the money to fund.
Thankfully, unlike the previous administration, we've got a 13% increase in our defense budget, and we will have the capability to cover down on contingencies,
Mr.
which is something the
Chairman,
National Guard and the Marine
back
plan
my
for.
time.
So we have the funding to cover down on contingencies, especially ones as important as maintaining law and order in a major American city. As far as training, all of the units on the ground have been fully trained in their capabilities of what they're executing on the ground.
Chairman asked for budgetary. If he needs to get back to the committee with the numbers, I'd appreciate it, both current and present.
Happy to
Thank
submit
you.
them for the record.
Gentlemen will receive an answer to the question for the record.